in a school, that you can sub in that school regardless of whether, as long as you have a high school diploma. That bill has been drawing attention, and you'll probably hear about that later. The other challenge that we've been trying to work on is the need for CPR and first aid, and the challenge students are having with respect to getting a class that has you work on a mannequin. There are courses available, we're finding, but they're intermittent and sometimes hard to find. So I'd like to put into the chat, I just started, and my team might not be aware of it, a Google spreadsheet that I thought I would share with and I'll send it out to the DARTEP listserv if that's something DARTEP thinks makes sense, where people can just put in where they're finding CPR and first aid, share, because I'm finding different sources and things. When I say I can't find it, they'll be, oh, this place in Plymouth is offering it and it's blah, blah, blah. And so I thought that might be useful for all of us to share in these trying times. But with that said, I think our friends, particularly in more rural areas or in the UP, are still finding this a real challenge for their students. And so we're trying to advocate on behalf of members and students. And the other challenge that we're having for some of our students are the MTTC tests are being canceled, and students are having a hard time passing that. And our friends at MDE, as I understand it, hands are tied because a lot of these things are in law. And so trying to figure out how to get some sort of forgiveness is really one of our main concerns. So is there any, I know I've got a bunch of partners in crime here. Is there anything else I left out? All right, that was appropriate wait time, eh?
I think you did good.
All right, thank you very much. And the next person, go ahead.
All right. Ray, yep. Are you available to talk about MATE?
I am. For the Michigan ATE, we've got just a few things. Our executive board is meeting this coming week. Membership in Michigan ATE is still no cost. So if you have any students or temporary faculty, regular faculty, clinical faculty, school-based people who might benefit from connecting to a professional organization, please point them to me so we can collect their information. All we need is their name and institution and their email address. Also, our publication, Perspectives on Critical Issues in Education, is pending for May 2021 publication. This has been a unique time of trying to get that whole thing put together. However, it's all coming together. Submission page is listed there in the comments. And we're looking for a wide variety of types of submissions. We've had a couple so far recently from student teachers in the field, from host teachers, from faculty doing research. So it's a wide variety of opportunities in there, and the call for submissions is in there. We have dispensed with doing the Student Teacher of the Year and Teacher of the Year competitions for this year because any way we looked at it, it didn't actually seem fair to somebody. So we will move into that hopefully for the 21-22 academic year. We're also looking at a summer virtual conference, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully by the time we get to the February meeting, we'll have some more information. And by and large, if you've got any questions, please contact me at franc1rw@cmich.edu. It's in the note. It's also on the website for the organization, which is michiganate.org. So thank you very much. It's good to see everybody.
Ray, I have a quick question. Have you sent out any information this fall semester so far from MATE?
We've got not right now, but it will probably be coming out after the executive board meeting next Tuesday.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. Thank you.
So I forgot something really important. So People who deal with the AACTE membership costs, we have negotiated with AACTE to have a 25% reduction in your dues if you're a member of MACD. And so contact me if there's any, and we're working on trying to figure that out. MACD has been offering reductions if you can join as a group rate. And so we're trying to do that as a group rate. We might need to see if we can get a couple more members in order to maintain that. But so it's whoever at your institution that takes care of memberships, so they can feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Ray, thank you very much for your update as well. Joe, are there any updates for Michigan Public Deans Council?
Yes, we have a couple. Thank you for the airtime. So I'm serving as the president for the Michigan Public Deans Council, and then Michael McDonald is the president-elect, and Michael's at Oakland University. So I think there's two main areas that we're focusing on this year. One is probably what everybody's doing, is the teacher shortage and retention, and then the other one is issue of social justice. And so just some quick update on some actions we've been working on. We've written in support of the November 3rd, 2020 communication from Vanessa Kiesler, who was at that time the deputy superintendent, and MDE's efforts to change how teacher evaluations are done relative to student outcomes data, growth and assessment data. And so we wrote Dr. Rice in support of that. I believe we copied Leah on that, and that's a focus for us. And we've been checking that. We know that the Michigan Association of School Administrators and their new executive director, Dr. Tina Kerr, and other ed organizations in the state are in support of that. So it's not something we're just going ahead and doing on our own. We've been trying to do our homework and build those relationships. So we've taken action there. Additionally, we're really trying to just get more nimble at supporting MACD and responding to legislation that lessens qualifications for short-term fixes that could cause long-term problems for who can sub or not. So we'll keep our eye on that ball and keep partnering with other organizations there. We also are really proud of the work that Holly Carruthers out of MDE led around teacher cadet. And so that's something we'll definitely be bringing forward to the Michigan Public Deans Council to make sure that we're aware of that and can support all the efforts going on there. And then the other issue that we're going to focus on, and I think our plans are to dedicate a March public dean session to that, and we'll decide how we can invite the independent institutions and others, is the issue of how are we supporting our own code of ethics and our standards and the expectations we have for candidates at the initial and advanced level when it comes to issues of social justice. And we thought a really tangible way to push on that for us is, why are we making student teaching placements and clinical placements at school sites that still have derogatory or mascots or nicknames that represent racial slurs? And we really want to focus on that and work with the Department of Civil Rights and really work with our tribal liaisons, tribal directors, and elders, because this is still an ongoing issue. And it's something we really want to address and give a focus to, and ask the question: how are we wrestling with that? How are we inadvertently supporting that or overtly supporting those types of things? It's time that we work as a PK20 system on that issue. So I'll be happy to answer any questions folks have.
Excellent. Joe, thank you very much. Sounds like you're doing some really good work. Next is MyPie, that's Michigan Independent Educator Preparation Institutions, and Susan English and I co-chair that organization, and we do not have any updates. So I will go on to the Consortium of Outstanding Achievement in Teaching with Technology. Stein, are you able to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I can give a report. So Stein Brunvan from the University of Michigan Dearborn. First, I just want to mention to Beth Fighton, I noticed that Dearborn's is on your naughty list. So rest assured, I understand the importance of not being on that list this time of year. So I put a note in my calendar. We're going to take care of that
Beautiful.
first thing
Thank
on
you,
Monday.
Stein.
Okay. I don't need any more coal in my stocking. So anyway, COAT did meet for the first time in quite a while last month. And we had about 8 or 9 institutions represented. And the conversation largely revolved around what we're all doing with the NP endorsement, which is the EdTech endorsement, if you're not familiar with that. And of the institutions that were represented, the majority either had discontinued offering the endorsement or were in conversations or moving in that direction to discontinue offering the endorsement, and focus attention more on the revision of their grade bands and incorporating those different standards and technology skills within the courses and requirements of their grade band structures. So it seems like there's more and more movement away from offering that NP endorsement and making sure those skills and competencies are met and taught at the initial certification level. But that's all we have from COAT.
All right, Stein, thank you very much.
Excuse me 1 second, Lori. Stein, there was an ELF error on the list. And so just so you're aware, U of M Dearborn is paid in full back in September. So I'll talk to the ELFs about their error.
Thank you. Thank you.
I
And
apologize.
I'll admit right up front, I had absolutely nothing to do with that. So whoever took care of it, thank you very much.
Okay, Mitten, Paula, are you with us today? And any updates? Okay, then we will move on to DARTEP business. We need to review the October 2nd DARTEP minutes for approval. And in order to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but we're doing this virtually, we'll do what we did last meeting. And so I would like you to please indicate in the comments section if you're opposed to the approval to accept the October minutes as presented. And you can indicate by stating nay in the comments section. All right, we will then move on to Cindy Carver. She is going to tell us a couple of things about an opportunity to complete a survey.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to at least see you virtually. I will be sending a link to a survey to all of you this afternoon and inviting you to participate. And the survey is to really assess where we are with social emotional learning competencies within our teacher preparation programs currently. So I want to briefly give you a little background as to where this comes from. This is, by the way, not a research study, and it is something I'm doing as a member of my CELA. And so Lauren Casey and Lisa Gallagher presented last month to all of us, and they represent a group called my CELA, Michigan Social Emotional Learning Alliance. And I have been a member of that this past year. And in this work, I started to notice that there are a lot of different ways people talk about social emotional learning content and competencies. So some people talk about it as self-regulation and refer to it within a broader context of trauma-informed instruction. Others talk about it as mental health support, and others talk about it as diversity, equity, and inclusion. The literature is also equally kind of scattered as to how we define what social emotional learning is. But we do know that it finds itself, and it has found itself into the professional standards. So as we're working on our grade bands, we all need a better understanding of what we mean by social emotional learning, and then also what that might look like. So my first foray into this was we have an advisory group that's been working with us as we developed our grade bands. And this advisory group for the last 3 years has been telling us, we need this, we need this, we need this. You need to bake this into your program. But what we found is we have to define what this is. And then the second thing is, how do we do that? And that's where the literature is also really, really void of ideas. There are schools that have adopted programs, but we don't have a lot of examples. There are just a handful of very small examples of universities, university-based teacher prep that have addressed this issue. So this survey is a 15-minute survey. Do it fast. It's for members of DARTEP. So there's no need to forward it to other individuals that you're working with, whether it might be supervisors you work with or instructors you work with, or just keep it in-house. You will not be identified in this survey, though you do have an opportunity to indicate the size of program you represent and the role you represent. So you're going to get this survey link from me this afternoon, and I hope that you will take the time to complete this, because I think the information can be really useful to all of us as we think about how do we live into the professional standards of the new grade bands. So I'll drop my email into the link. I'm at Oakland University, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. So thank you all.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you very much. And very timely after the session we had in October on social emotional learning. So thank you for including us in that opportunity. All right, I'm going to move it over to you, Sean, for our MDE updates.
Great, thank you. Brian can reactivate the slides. Do a quick first intro for those who have their cameras on. They can wave to you. For several team members with us today from the preparation team. We have Bridget McDowell, Darcy McMahon, and Gina Garner. They're all here. We also have Krista Reed, our manager of our certification unit, and of course our office director, Leah Breen, who is negotiating multiple calls and things as we speak. We also have a special guest who will speak in just a moment in part of this presentation. It's Candace Vinson from our Office of Career and Technical Education. There was a piece in the written updates that she contributed, and she's going to speak a little more about that with you this morning. A reminder, in the written updates, the last couple of pages have a nice directory by subject of who to contact at MDE for what. So if you make sure, we want to make sure people get the right help that they need for any issue, and that lays it all out. If there's any other MDE person that I failed to mention, please shout out or put it in the chat. I did a quick look on the participant list to see. Now, with that said, then let's move on to the next slide, please. All right, thank you. Again, I always remind you all of our social media channels. We try to seed a lot of content into that. Be sure to like or follow Office of Educator Excellence on any of these social media platforms. And please post about great work happening in your school communities using their Proud Michigan Educator or PME hashtags. Our Educationally Speaking newsletter comes out each month. There'll be an edition coming out in a couple of weeks. You can always sign up for that on our website. Yeah, keep following us. We are always looking for really good content to go both in the newsletter as well as in the social media. I mean, we love having shout outs to Michigan teachers and to highlight the great work that's going on at your institutions and with your graduates. All right, we go to the next slide. So this is the breaking news, key legislation, things that were acted on just this week. As a reminder, there is a curated list of bills from the House and the Senate with some updates in the written updates. But I want to, not a lot of new things education-wise have dropped since our last meeting, because I mean, nothing's going on, right? Government, why not have more bills here on education? No, they've been occupied with some other things. I can say one here is the mental health professional learning that was voted out of the Education Committee and sent to the whole Senate. That's Senate Bill 41. Essentially says the department will create standards for some professional learning for teachers about mental health, and that it'll be something that can go into the 1527 professional learning obligations. It's not a requirement for getting a certificate or for renewal of the certificate. It doesn't carry that. It just says we create standards and approve programs in that area, and lays out a couple of topics about mental health awareness for teachers. The bill that Beth brought up, and I'll take that baton and move it on. The House Bill 4342 on family members of students who can substitute without college credits. It's gone through a couple of substitutions, and so the substitute bill that is now out there removed the references to family members as part of it, and it allows any individual who is already employed by the school to substitute teach, and the language of it now is without a certificate or a permit, and it is limited to the current school year, so between now and the end of June. So I have it on authority that the without a permit piece will also be slated to be eliminated before the House votes on it, so that these individuals have to have a credential. They have to come through our system to get it. But the piece about family members and, yes, the genetic connection to somebody in the building, that was removed. And it went through Education Committee and House Ways and Means Committees. So it went to both, and they both voted it out in this form, and it's on to the whole House. Would the permit be just a year? Yes, our permits are, they all, they go 1 year, and that's it. No matter, and they all expire at the same time. So if we got a full year basic permit today, it's going to expire the same time that if I got one last month. So provided there's no further change to the bill, then yeah, it is limited to 2020-21. I could say that dyslexia bills that I reported on last time, no action has been taken on those yet. So those are still there. They haven't been scheduled for any hearings. There have been some op-eds from their sponsors in various newspapers, but as far as moving on that, I haven't seen any movement. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. All right, if I can skip that slide, there are a couple of errors on that one. So that was, say, just go to the written update and you can find some of the links. There were a couple of errors on that slide with regard to the specific bill numbers. So I apologize. I eliminated it on my screen, but it was already presenting. A reminder of the top 10 strategic education plan and our various initiatives. I want to focus specifically on one of those, and that is third from the bottom, second from the bottom, increasing the numbers of certified teachers in areas of shortage. And if you go to the next slide, Leah Breen gave a presentation on this at the November State Board of Education meeting. You can view that presentation, the slides, and the data sheet that were presented at that bit.ly. Top 10, so that's a 1 and a 0, and then SEP. I believe it was originally intended to be in September, and that's why the bit.ly has SEP in there. I know Leah popped back on, so I don't know if that's my reading of that bit.ly is accurate.
That is accurate. It was supposed to be in September.
And then we almost didn't have a November board meeting, and then we did have a November board meeting. So anyway, there you go. That's the, you can go to that. Leah, did you want to say any words about that, that presentation?
No, I mean, I think that you would all find the data that are presented interesting. We are seeing an uptick in teacher candidates getting initial certification, which is great news. And we're also seeing an increase in hires in the teacher workforce in K-12 education. So that's also great news. They're increasing the number of teachers they need. And so the profession is still one that should be desirable, if not because there is a great need. So all good news. There was interesting things in there, so take a peek when you have time.
Great, thank you. So from the field, what to do with December graduates? This came up also earlier in Beth's presentation, but we fielded a lot of questions about this. That 1-year temporary certificate for those who've not passed the test or had an opportunity to take the test due to COVID closures as well, or the first aid and CPR, that is no longer available. Again, that was via, we were allowed to do that via an executive order that expired on September 30th. And then subsequent Supreme Court action said that the governor couldn't do that anymore under that, that authorization. So that is not available. So while we wait for any additional, action or creative executive solution or a legislative action on it, your graduates can be hired under a substitute permit. Of course, the district has to apply for those. Your graduates, for those who are getting a permit to teach in areas in which they're non-core academic or that they have a major, they can get the full year basic permit, which is sort of the top line permit, specifies the content area and everything. For those who don't have a major or are teaching in an area that's not their major or haven't tested, I mean, obviously those who have tested can get their certificates. The daily substitute permit is the one that's available. We'll say we are increasing MTTC testing capacity. Evaluation Systems has authorized 7 new third-party centers around the state. 4 of them are in the Detroit area, 2 are in Grand Rapids, and 1 is in Newberry, so in the UP. One of them, and I believe it's the one in one of the Detroit area ones, is open now. They have over 500, or as of a couple days ago, had over 500 open testing slots for this month, and then over 1,500 for January and for February each. So a lot more testing capacity. Others are coming online in January, and then others in February. So there's kind of a staggered when those tests will be open to them. Sherry dropped a question, full year basic permit, something that has to be requested by the hiring public school. Yes. Only exception, of course, is the schools that contract out that service through like their third-party subbing agencies. But yeah, it has to be the hiring school, the university. Neither the university nor the candidate can apply for a permit directly. And then first aid and CPR courses are available. We know we have a lot of hybrid courses that are out there where mannequins are sent to candidates so they can do a live demonstration on a mannequin for, in their from their home. fully 100% online classes are not permitted at this time because they don't have that live demonstration on a mannequin that's specified in law. But we do have these available. We got word from the Red Cross that their classes are deemed essential services, so that's helpful. I know that courses to be offered or potentially to be offered on a university campus can't be while the campuses are closed. We've had that issue, but there are courses out there for our candidates. A word on that MTTC, people getting their tests canceled. In October, all of our Pearson-owned centers they went up to 100% testing capacity, and then less than a week later had to shut down to 50% capacity due to Health and Human Services regulations, which caused 138 tests to have to be rescheduled. So that's the numbers we have. We don't have the numbers on the university-based testing centers or the third parties. Okay, let's move to administrative rules revisions. And we've got, the first is the calendar. Our administrative rules go through a regular cycle of revision. This is our timeline right now, where we are at the stakeholder meeting process. Every time, you recall, we had a set of rules that were that took effect in 2017, and immediately from the point that those take effect, we start gathering ideas and feedback to inform future rules revisions and track them. And that's what happened here through 17, 18, 19, and then here into 20. We're talking to various stakeholders before then going out back into the whole regulatory process for public hearings in the spring, ideally, and then these being submitted for the great seal of the state of Michigan in late summer to fall. And so we brought to you, we brought for your consideration a selection of rules that affect teacher preparation to run by you and to get some feedback on. We'll kind of run through all of this, and then if we have time before the next phase of the meeting, we can take some feedback now. Otherwise, we can take feedback during the MDE debrief or via email, chat, what have you. So if we go to the first one, this is adding the specialist programs as another pathway to the advanced professional certificate. So as a refresher, the advanced professional requires national board certification or completion of a teacher leader program. We propose to add, and this has come from the field as a request, adding the option to for someone who has completed a specialist preparation program that's been approved by the department and that then shows up on the certificate as one of those pathways. So one more option to do that. Then to support that, we had to also add a definition of what a specialist program is into the definition section that's earlier in the rules. Go to the next one. In the elementary program requirements, you know, we've talked to you a lot about you can get certified in one thing, like you could get certified in elementary, and you don't have to have a second piece with it. And we've talked about programming in that. What this does finally cleans up a bit in the rule, eliminating, because rule right now says you have to have an elementary, like your elementary all subjects, and then you have to have another thing, whether that other thing is special ed or a content area or ESL or what have you. We're finally removing that piece out of the rules because it's doesn't align with our practice. And so you can see here the strike through in the all caps, changing the language from saying elementary level, grade level authorization to simply elementary level certification. And if you go to the next slide, this is where that removal of the second area of focus appears. So it merges the language between these two things to simply say completion of an approved course of study and base knowledge appropriate for elementary education and appropriate field experiences, methods coursework and appropriate field experiences as specified in state board approved standards. All right. Additional endorsements. This is a little more radical, I think, than the previous one is kind of cleaning up some of the old language. Here, to get an additional endorsement, we had a requirement that a program of study be a minimum of 20 semester credit hours, and we are removing that to provide more flexibility in the development of EPP programs and implementation of specific program standards, to simply say presenting evidence of completion of an approved additional endorsement program. Barring specific requirements built into standards for a requirement for an additional endorsement program, this would allow institutions to be able to create additional endorsement programs that are fewer than 20 semester credit hours to be able to do this. We do get candidates who take additional endorsement programs out of state or come to us from out of state with their certificates, and they don't necessarily have 20 or more credits for that, and this also helps our reciprocity then with the people who are coming in with fewer than 20 credits in their programs.
We'll be rewriting the reciprocity section to try and capture the nuances of that. Instead of currently, we use this section, which has nothing to do with out-of-state candidates, as the basis for our reciprocity. It's just not, it's not streamlined the way it should be. But there's also a question in the chat, Sean.
Yep, I see.
Will removing the credit hours open the door for the alternative routes and PD endorsements, et cetera? And I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, I can say with alternative routes, candidates can take an alternative route now to get additional endorsements. That's not, that's in a separate part of the rule. So that door has been open for some years. PD endorsements, I assume you mean getting endorsements via sketch-based programs or things through professional learning. Right now, we don't have, we have a moratorium on new educator preparation providers, so it could not be, we couldn't just have another, like an ISD right now, become approved to do that, to recommend people for an endorsement in something. This would be basically your individuals or the existing providers.
Sean, this is Joe Lubig, NMU.
Yeah.
So relative to that previous slide, then this, what I think I hear you saying is this maybe helps an institution like ours who is struggling with how to staff a 5.9 certificate. This may allow us to educate our faculty, staff, and candidates. So this is how you move through our program. This is what you are able to do initially as you go into a high school experience or a K-12 build, whatever. We can add the 5.9 because yeah, because we've met all the other pieces, we would still have to adhere to the clinical hours,
Right.
just not the credit hours, and then document clinical hours for pedagogy and subject area. Like we could figure that out and propose that to MDE as an
Right.
approved
Yeah. Yeah. And
additional.
the key word there is approved. Yeah. So right, it'd be something you'd propose. We get. Yeah. So that yeah, exactly right. I want to address Molly's question, and then I'll go back to Sally posed a question in here too. Practicum hours, new field experiences still be required? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's not changed. That's the clinical experiences requirements are still in effect here. Sally was asking about the flexibility for a temporary one-year certificate as was offered in the spring. And no, we cannot do that. That was through an executive order that is no longer in effect and is not scheduled to come back because the Supreme Court ruled the law under which that was done to be unconstitutional.
Hey, Sean, can I speak to that just a little bit?
Please.
So a couple of things. The executive order that we issued teacher candidates a one-year temporary teaching certificate so that they could take their tests last year is gone. Sean is right. We did 1 year in many cases from their issue date. So if the teacher candidate applied for that one-year certificate in May, we did it to May. What we are going to do here shortly is we're going to extend all of those through June 30th. So we're going to reinterpret this order. Instead of one calendar year, we're going to go one academic year and make sure that they can finish out this academic year on this temporary teaching certificate to give them more time to test, which then theoretically should also give them over the summer so they can finish out their role. So we hope that'll be helpful. We don't really have great authority for that, but candidates should see their certificates change very soon, and we are going to notify them by email after we extend those dates for them. So we're hopeful that should help. But Sally, is that the flexibility that you're speaking to? Because they should be able, they should be able to be paid a full teacher salary on those interim teaching certificates. They should not be getting sub pay.
Leah, I was speaking about the group that's student teaching right now that we're not a part of this spring.
Okay.
They're
So
still
yes,
not able to take their tests, and they're finishing up in December and have jobs waiting for them, and they're not able to get paid full. They can't get a cert yet because they can't pass their test.
okay. So yeah, in Sean's case, he's correct, or what Sean said is correct. Then we don't have authority to do that, but you emailing people about that would be helpful because that will raise it back to the top of something that needs to be addressed. Also, please tell your candidates to use the Pearson VUE testing centers. I mean, we keep trying to communicate this, but the ones that are getting canceled are typically the college and university ones because they're dependent on the university or college being opened or closed. If they use the Pearson VUE centers, which are listed specifically on registration, they have a much better chance of those tests not being canceled.
Great. That's a good tip. Thank you, Leah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a seat finder app on the Pearson website that can help with getting a locating where the seats are open for a given test. So we encourage people to use that instead of relying just on whatever the test was. I'm sorry, the single test center where they had been. All right, if we can move to the next slide. Thank you. This and then the next 3 slides after it are about school administrator programs and the rule set for school administrator preparation. So for those of you who are offering these programs, these changes will be most relevant. This portion of the school administrator certification code identifies the 2 existing endorsements that can be placed on the school administrator certificate, and says only these 2. The proposal here is to remove this reference, which would then provide the opportunity to be more intentional about the appropriate placement of administrators, and also allow for other things to be added to the school administrator, such as the special education administrator endorsements. We just had those standards implemented. Developed and approved, and we're in the process of trying to get those implemented. There are proposed additions in another section that will help clarify placement of administrators and when they must hold the certificate, since that has been a great point of confusion since the January 2009 change of the law, particularly around the grandparenting of administrators, those who had got the experience-based certificate, which really should have been said experience-based endorsement on an administrator certificate. We hope that cleaning this up and other changes there will support that, that placement. If you go to the next, this is a general cleanup of language and how we use words and try to mitigate some confusion that happens between a professional learning enhancement, which is something that's specified in law, and an endorsement. And I think each of the, no, this is the first one. So this is in the definitions. Then what is a professional learning enhancement? Can be a school administrator certificate enhancement or a specialty endorsement, as described in law. We've had enough confusion over what's an enhancement versus what's an endorsement. I hope to try to reconcile that. We had, you know, for example, there are professional learning enhancements that one can get and put on a certificate that aren't really endorsements. I'm trying not to use some of our forbidden language on this. But there's a word that starts with an M and there's a word that starts with a B that we don't want to entertain. So there are, anyway, we have some odd situations of individuals who have their admin certificate, but they only have this professional learning enhancement somehow that came through. But we want to clean that up so that it's clearly endorsements that you use to place people rather than these enhancements. So the next slide unpacks that a bit more. This edition clarifies when the enhancement can be added. It's not something that can stand alone. So it can only be added to an already existing school admin certificate, a valid or an expired one. It doesn't help in employment and placement if the certificate is expired. With MOEX, though, it can be an application timing issue. And Krista can give examples of this if necessary. And I let her speak to that if she wants to. Go ahead.
It's really about when they're using an enhancement, like the program itself, for the sketches to renew their certificate expires, and it's that timing of being able to get an application in. If our system was not allowing anyone to add an endorsement or an enhancement to something that was expired, and it's a timing thing. Quite often it happens in June when they finish. Teachers have the same problem with they're finishing an endorsement program and aren't able to actually add the endorsement to their certificate because it's expired. Which, chicken and the egg, which one comes first? So we're just trying to eliminate that issue within our rules.
All right. And if we move to the next slide. And the next slide essentially is the same. It's the same language, but it's in the next part of the rule, just reiterating it for where that is appropriate in our rules. Okay. And that covers our quick overview of rules revisions. Again, we could still entertain questions in here. Do a lot of that during, hopefully do some of that in within Java Likes and MDE Debrief. I do want to turn the mic over to Candace Vinson, from our Office of Career and Technical Education. She has some very interesting and exciting things for you, and is a valuable partner in our work in ensuring quality teacher preparation, particularly in the career and tech ed space. So Candace, take it away.
Hey, Sean, sorry, Candace. Hi, Candace. Can I just add one little bit about the rules and that you're getting a sneak peek? This is not the public comment period. This is not the normal public comment period where you get to really dive in and give us your feedback. This is your sneak peek at these rules, giving you a chance to really think about how they're going to impact your work. Find the positives, find the negatives. Let us know about the negatives right away, but pack away those positives so that you can share them in the public comment period. Just like customer service, and I'm sure you're all familiar with some aspects of customer service, you often hear the negative and you don't hear the positive. If you see something good that you like and you recognize why it's important, we want to hear that as much as we do the negative. Give us the negative now so that we can make changes before it goes to public comment, and then store away that positive so that you can provide that in the public comment time. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Candace Benson. I'm from the Office of Career and Technical Education. I see a lot of familiar faces on the screen and names up there from working with some of you through this program. But we're really excited in the Office of Career Tech to share some of what we're doing through our transition from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5 federal legislation. And so in Michigan, within our career and tech programs, we have decided to use credentialing as a performance indicator for our career tech programs. And that means within each of our, I think there's 53 or 54 different SIP areas, the classification of instruction programs. They will all be offering throughout the course of Perkins 5 some level of an industry credential that would allow students to be immediately employable and or provide them with a pathway into post-secondary. And so with MDE, we've been really lucky in the education and training career cluster that we have technical assistance. So we have a federal technical assistance from Region 8 Comprehensive Center Network. And we're really fortunate to be able to utilize those resources and expertise as we've been working through curricular updates with our education and training teachers. And some of you may know them as teacher cadet instructors, some of you know them as early education, some as educational careers. They used to operate under the name SEEK, which was Secondary Educators for Early Childhood. Now their group is called MECA, Michigan Educational Careers Association. And so these teachers met with us. This is the beginning of our second year of implementation. In the first year of implementation, our teachers actually committed to meet every other week, kind of from the first week of COVID hitting in March. These teachers have met repeatedly to work on the curriculum and discuss how to make improvements and potential barriers to offering these credentials through these programs. They took the fall off because they were a little overwhelmed with starting the school year in a different manner than they've been used to. But we're really excited to present this. So again, thank you for having me, and you can go ahead and next slide. Perfect. So our work not only aligns with our CTE Perkins 5 credentialing piece, but the work that we're doing aligns with the governor's goals, the goals of the MDE top 10. In fact, when you look at the top 10 list, we knock off about half of them as primary goals, increasing the amount of teachers, increasing our early childhood workers are two of the big goals there. But these credentials will allow for students to be immediately employable in their local districts or in districts near their college campuses as they take their next step towards teacher certification. The CDA aligns really nicely to the BK teaching endorsement. So if you're not familiar with the CDA, it's the Child Development Associate through National Council. The MySATI provides experiences for students who would like to work with older or higher grade level experiences. And so the MySATI is an out of school time 21st century credential, and that's necessary for out of school time programs to maintain their federal funding. So both of these pieces are necessary for GSRP programs or for 21st century programs. And we're trying to increase the amount that are out there, but we're also trying to give really meaningful opportunities to students in CTE programs. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I don't know if I can do, okay. One thing that we did in the spring is we collected some data from our programs to determine where the access points were to these CTE education and training programs. And what you see on the screen there is an ISD map. And for 2020, even with the pandemic, this shows you in the green areas that all students in a region or ISD, a RESA or ISD, have access to the program. The yellow indicates that some students do, and the white is where we have gaps in access in 2020. One thing that we asked within our survey was who would be interested in beginning a program for 2021. With all the changes to Perkins 5, with Perkins 5, there were some changes to this program as far as prioritizing it on the CTE list. It's moved up on the rank list, and so it's a higher priority area nationwide now. So whenever a program moves into that really high on the CTE rank list, our locals tend to want to offer it more because that increases their funding for CTE. It will generate more funding for them. We have 7 early middle colleges across the state. 6 are contracted programs. So that means they're offered at the community college. For example, in Genesee, that is offered through the Mott Community College, the program is. But the majority of these programs actually sit in local comprehensive high schools, with the second highest majority sitting in the ISD or RESA. For example, where I live in Macomb County, they all sit in a local because there is no tech center. Go ahead to the next slide, please. As we moved into the 2021 numbers, all of these different ISDs or RESAs that you see in red here have indicated that they would like to begin programs. And there's a large majority of our locals that have asked to start programs that are located in the Oakland County, Wayne County area. So even though we've got a lot of yellow down here in the Metro Detroit area, it's because these programs run out of local districts. And so some local districts have consortium agreements with others. Some don't. A lot of that boils down to school of choice and local decision making. But there's a lot of access even in the Metro Detroit area, and a lot of interest in growing. Okay, you can head on to the next slide, please. So a little bit about these credentials is that they've already been determined. Our team with Region 8 is working on a crosswalk right now. This is a cross-office venture between GSRP, CTE, and the Office of Educator Excellence. So the 3 offices have representatives all on the internal stakeholder team, and we're looking for more representation on our external stakeholder team. Go ahead to the next one. I don't want to take too much time here. Our internal technical assistance team is going to be working on aligning the CDA to the birth to kindergarten, so the beginning standards within that certificate, not all of them, but just the very beginning ones. But this is a draft showing what was previously taught on the right side of the screen. We had segments, and so those of you that work with CTE programs, you may have heard of the 12 segments in each program. Those segments are going away with Perkins 5, and we will be working with competencies. So we took the segments, we rolled them to competencies, and we ensured that these 2 credentials align with the competencies that have been determined. And so what you can see is that for some of our education and training programs, there's going to be a lot more rigor and a lot more time involved in the CTE program than what schools were used to. Any school that had a 1-year program is most likely increasing it to a 2-year program as a result of this work. One competency that's brand new, or an area that's brand new for education and training, is having a family and community engagement competency. So this has been a priority of the department, and through our family engagement work, as we looked at the two credentials that are going to be offered, both of them had a competency tied to family and community engagement, and we think that's important for high school students as a part of their leadership component in CTE in particular to embrace that competency. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thanks. We're going to have a lot more marketing materials rolling out in year 2. This is kind of our big kickoff to let people know what we're doing and market these programs in our high schools and market all of the amazing benefits of becoming an educator. So there's been a lot of negativity surrounding becoming a teacher or going into education, and we really want to start at that high school level to show high school students that no, this is an amazing field to work in. And when you earn these credentials, here are some of the things you could do for immediate employment, but here's where your credential could take you with continued education into post-secondary fields. And so this is just our intro marketing piece. We are going to continue to have marketing piece. It's a grow your own, not just for teaching, but again, to help local districts with staffing their GSRPs and their out of school time programs with qualified candidates. And this is kind of where our DARTEP partners come in, and where we want to invite you to be a part of the work that we're doing. And so you can go ahead to the next slide. We have 4 universities right now who have already partnered with these CTE education programs. And as you look on the screen here, just know that these are real students from these programs who have taken campus tours or attended a conference. So Central holds this really great conference in the fall. And as a teacher, I got to take my students there. And now as an education consultant, I get to see all of those teachers bringing their students on board. They hold advisory meetings with teachers. One year when we were at Central, our partners at Central handed us all a book and said, well, we need high school students to know a little bit more about this book because this is what we're awarding credit for. And so we said, okay, we're going to start to roll that into our curriculum then. Students get to take campus tours. You can go ahead to the next slide. Oakland has a conference coming up in the spring that's going to be entirely virtual. They do some professional learning for the teachers in this area, again, to keep them up to date with the latest and greatest with business and industry. And you're our business and industry partners in this area. And we just want to welcome more. You can go ahead to the next one. This is our Saginaw Valley. Saginaw Valley also has a partnership with Saginaw's County Career Complex Early Middle College program. So that's kind of neat to see. Students can take classes at their local community college and then transition over to Saginaw Valley. And then go ahead to the next one. I just wanted to show pictures of students. And here you can see, these are pictures from a conference that Western has traditionally put on in the spring that also had some competition elements to it. And students in high school love to compete. The girls at this, down at the bottom corner, they were in an impromptu teaching. They were given a lesson and told, okay, plan your lesson and then teach it. And that was their competition. And you can see on the left hand here, these are actually former students of mine. I taught in a Title I high school in Macomb County. For these students in this picture, there was an equity piece to having a university partner to their program. They had never been on a field trip in high school. This was their one and only field trip in a high school, and they chose to get on a big yellow school bus for a 3-hour plus ride from Macomb County all the way over to Kalamazoo. And they were excited, and they wore their Western swag when they got back to the high school, because some of these kids didn't even have a bag to put their books in. So a big equity piece in trying to bring in students that wouldn't necessarily go into teaching or even maybe to college. And then they get a campus tour and they get to meet instructors and deans. I don't know if you saw in that picture from Oakland, but they were actually eating their dinners with all of the instructors and professors from Oakland University's education program. So just really cool stuff that we're trying to do, and we'd love to see more partnerships. If you are interested, you can go ahead to the next slide. If you're interested in partnering with some of these programs and learning more, I would love to discuss that with you. in whatever capacity that would be beneficial to secondary and your post-secondary institution. And the other piece too, and I don't know if they're on the call, but for our state and regional teachers of the year, last year and the year before, we started to partner with those teachers. And Kara, who was the teacher of the year last year, she really worked with these programs. She worked with the teachers and in trying to make sure that they were really providing the latest and greatest information to their students. And then she was a guest speaker for many of the students and sharing with them what it took for her to become teacher of the year and part of what she does in that role. So it really increased things, increased opportunities for students, and that's what we're all about in CTE. So thank you again. And if you have any questions or you'd like to partner more with some of our schools, I would love to just forge those connections and relationships. Thanks.
All right, well, that is everything that we prepared for you today. Thank you very much, Candace. We have some time before we had planned, I think, to go till 10:35. So we've got some extra time between now and then the next item starts at 10:50. So happy to entertain questions or defer to Lori to adjust the schedule, if you like.
Why don't we see if anyone has any questions? Do I have a timeline when K content area MTTCs will no longer be offered? And yes. And I think we provided that in the last meeting. So give me a moment and I will pull that information up. Unless Bridget has it like right at hand.
I think if the question is about when the elementary, is that what's meant by K-8 content?
I believe, no, like the BX, like elementary social studies, elementary language arts.
That's a good question. I'll have to look for that.
Sorry. I think I put that in, addressed it last time. Let me just check. Yeah, 2029, or when those will be done. Because since they overlap with that 5-9, yeah, the 5-9 grade band. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, if there are no more questions at this time, we'll go ahead and take our break early. After break, we'll begin at 10:50 and we'll have job-alike sessions. And normally for those, we ahead of time ask people to be note takers. And so we've determined 4 individuals who will be doing that. And also, if speaking to the note takers, if you could find someone to be the moderator or the person that will lead the meeting while you take notes. I'll be doing that for the deans and directors, Catherine. And then I think Kristen Rich has asked Jane Gensink to help with field placement directors. So Jamie and Jennifer, you may, if you can find someone to lead your meetings so you can take notes, that would be helpful. So we'll come back to after a break and we'll go straight into job-alike meetings. Those will go until 11:20, and maybe note takers, if you can keep track of time, that would be helpful. and then we'll report out at 11:20. So we'll see you back in our job like meetings at 10:50. Welcome back. Looks like we have almost everyone. Okay, very good. I'll go ahead and get started with the deans and directors. And if you're in that session with me, I may not be able to cover all the things that we talked about. I wrote a couple things down that I can highlight, and Catherine took notes for our session. And so Catherine, feel free to add anything if there's something that I missed that you would like to pipe in with. One of the first things that we talked about are, and this was pretty much across the board, our concerns with teacher fatigue, what they've been going through, the P12 teachers. We also mentioned faculty and also talked about students in higher education, but also P12 students and social emotional difficulties right now as we go through the pandemic. A couple deans and directors talked about meeting with superintendents in local districts and what they're hearing from them about how the pandemic's really been taxing on our P12 teachers and the hours that they are taking even after work to have to do additional work. And so I think across the board that was raised as a concern. Also, it was brought up that going into observations with students, that supervisors are being encouraged to really build relationships, not only do the observations and look at lesson plans, but focus on relationship building, particularly as that's an important social emotional need for people that right now people need people. And again, through this pandemic, are we being honest? Are faculty members, are P12 teachers being honest about really the challenges and the social emotional implications of what we're going through? That also leads me to think about how, or one person indicated, this generation now, how is this generation of P12 students and future teachers going to be affected? Another individual talked about, how can we help secondary teachers as an institution, but also thinking about, with the online learning and some of the frustrations parents are sharing about, initially we thought, well, at least they'll start appreciating what teachers have to do, but now the frustration with, well, my kid's at home and they're, not learning anything, that as higher ed institutions, can we be, and teachers in P12 settings, can we be thinking about what really are the key concepts that students need to learn? And can we really focus on those and go in depth? And the person that talked through that said, the schools that they spoke with, it almost felt like a relief. Like if we can just focus on some key things deeply, that would maybe feel more manageable. Joe talked about a program that they've begun to, or I guess they've had a couple cohorts go through having a reduced tuition rate for first year teacher seminar for kind of a pipeline to get a master's degree. And the success, they've, like I said, offered a reduced tuition rate, but then they really hammer focus on some literacy strategies for those who are interested in continuing to go get a master's program. Sorry, Joe, if I'm not doing that justice. And another idea that came up was thinking through how we are really helping our students design their online teaching for the future as they have to go into teaching, or course design experiences that are online, and maybe recording those for their clinical experiences to be able to reflect upon. So those are some highlights from our session. Catherine, is there anything that you would like to add, or anyone else from the deans and directors?
I think the only thing I might add, and I think you talked about, is in identifying, knowing, and understanding the short-term and long-term goals. How can we not only work within our programs to support teachers, but work together across institutions to help, meet all these things that we see issues arising out of the current pandemic. But I think that would be it. And hopefully I took good notes.
Thank you for taking notes. And yes, thank you for adding to our session. All right, let's move on to certification officers. Jamie, did you have someone that facilitated, or would you be willing to share?
I'll share the notes. I want to thank Lucas Treadwell for facilitating the session for me while I took notes. Was brought up that the professional preparation pages on MDE list a minimum of 20 semester hours for an added endorsement, and that could be confusing with the students that look at that page. And so Krista Reed said that she's taken a screenshot of that page and that MOEX is responsible for updating that. So she'll take care of getting that page updated. They're also working in the MDE office to do a series of documents written to support the certification officers' jobs, as far as outlining the renewals and certification requirements. And also that students call with questions, and we can't see the MOEX screens that they're looking at as they fill out their applications. So we can't really guide them as to how to go through something when we don't know what they're looking at. And so they're going to try to do some step-by-step screenshots and share those with the certification officers and others to help them to guide students through how to fill out an application properly. And I know I'm having problems now with some students that are doing their applications that are elementary, and they're not putting the ZG endorsement on there. I had one I tried to recommend today, and I was not able to go in and add that ZG endorsement. We had to cancel that person's application, and MDE had to delete it, and then the person had to reapply. So there's some problems with that too. She did say that, Krista did say that the screen share options that are out there might be a possibility for developing something that we could use with the students, but it's going to take some looking into to see how applicable that would be for us. Someone asked about the changes in criminal reporting and the changes that they're referring to as that the civil infractions no longer need to be reported, only criminal convictions, and that's effective immediately. MTTC availability, students are calling with questions, and sometimes when we look at the website for available things, the student is not seeing the same availability we're seeing, and it was brought up that could be a matter that they need to refresh or clear their cache on their computer so that they can see the most updated list, but we're not really sure if that's what's going to work. But also to recommend to students that they try scheduling at a site that's farther away than they normally would. They might have a better chance of getting more availability, or even some centers in the Detroit metro area, some centers are open 24 hours a day to try to handle some of the backlog of people that need to take tests. Plus, they also provide other tests besides just MTTC tests. Temporary certifications, the 1-year temporary certs that were issued. It's my understanding if they were issued before June, that they would run through June 30th of next year. So they'll get the full academic year rather than having some that expire in March or April or something like that. So
June 30th.
June 30th, right. We did have a question from Oakland University as far as our other colleges and universities when they do their new programs or amended programs. Are they running those applications through the certification office or other people handling them? And most other universities said that they had some assistant dean or some other person that was responsible for doing those applications other than the certification office. And there was a question about teachers who want classes to renew their certificates that will also count toward an added endorsement, and the complications that's causing with the endorsements that are going to be going away with the new banded certificates, and how to communicate that to the students if there may be an expiration date to their program availability that they need to finish within a certain amount of time in order to be able to add that endorsement and have it be valid, because they have to be able to take the MTTC test before they're discontinued and have their program completed and do all the necessary courses they need, including the field experiences and possibly student teaching in order to earn that endorsement. That's all I have. Did I miss anything, Lucas? Okay.
Nope, I think that was good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. We'll move on then to accreditation and assessment, and then go right into field placement directors report out. We only have about 5 minutes. Maybe we can go a minute or two over, but if you can just summarize maybe briefly. Jennifer, are you gonna? Okay, go ahead.
So we talked a little bit about the new CAPE standards that were out for public comment. And Gina let us know that there was significant feedback on the 3.2. I mean, it's a different number in the new standards, but basically what we all know is 3.2 for the SAT, ACT cohort averages. There was a lot of feedback against using that standard, but it remains to be seen if CAPE will take that feedback and remove that standard. It's been recommended. That'll still need to go through the council and the board for approval. So we'll kind of wait and see on that. We did talk about maybe sending a letter of why are you not listening to your stakeholders if they continue to keep that standard in there. What else do we do? Gina encouraged people to become site visitors, that it's really advantageous to the institution to understand the site visiting process. We talked a little bit about difficulties of collecting the data during these times, during COVID, especially with our alumni and our completer data, because teachers are overwhelmed and stressed. So trying to collect that has been difficult. We talked a little bit about in-task standards. We think they've been revised, but really haven't seen any significant changes to that revision. And is the principal survey still on track, which it looks like it is, which is good. I think that's the highlights. I didn't miss anything. Someone please chime in.
That sounded good.
Okay. Okay, super.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. All right, moving on to field placement directors.
All right, good morning. We talked about 4 main things. The first one, and probably the most amount of time was spent on the challenge of trying to make placements right now.
And so a couple ideas were thrown out if MDE would be able and willing to send a letter out to districts and schools, just strongly encouraging them to take student teachers and pre-student teachers as well. Also, maybe considering addressing the fact that student teachers aren't guests in the buildings, but they are educators. That seems to be where we're getting a lot of pushback. Another idea was to connect with ISDs and see if they can also encourage districts and schools to take placements. The second thing we talked about was just creative seminar topics that we're covering with our student teachers. Some schools are doing smaller groups, having supervisors meet with smaller groups of student teachers, using video recording since a lot of our student teachers are recording themselves since supervisors can't come on campus, and doing reflection with that. We also talked about how are we helping student teachers and cooperating teachers adapt to the changes that are happening day by day sometimes. In some, we all feel a little overwhelmed with the amount of individual problems that keep being brought to us and trying to manage all of that. So we talked about some different ways that we are trying to cope and adapt. And then the last main thing we talked about was start dates. Since universities keep changing their semester start dates, there was just a discussion about are we doing that as well? Are we adjusting our start dates? Are we staying aligned with our partner schools? So that is our summary.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Kristen Rich. We are going to move on to a break. So after our break, we'll have the panel with the Michigan State and Regional Teachers of the Year. And then after that, we'll have an MDE debrief. So we will see you back at 12 o'clock. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you had a good short break, got some lunch or something in. I'm gonna hand it over now to Sean Koepke for the afternoon session.
Great, thank you very much. We're pleased to bring you members of our Teacher Leadership Advisory Council, which is our regional teachers of the year, as well as our state Michigan Teacher of the Year. To kick this off, I'd like to introduce Josh Reisner. He is an educator talent specialist in our office in the recruitment and recognition unit and coordinates activities involving our most excellent teachers of the year. So Josh, take it away.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you all members of DARTEP for having us today. I'm very excited to present to you all the 2020-2021 Regional Teachers of the Year, including the 2021 Michigan Teacher of the Year, Owen Bondano. And really today, what the Regional Teachers of the Year want to share with you all are some reflections on their own educator preparation experience, share some things that they're seeing in the classroom to help you all as you guide the next generation of great, proud Michigan educators. So I'm not going to cut into their time anymore. I'm going to turn it over to Owen and the Regional Teachers of the Year to introduce themselves. They'll share with you their names, the regions they represent, as well as the schools, subjects that they teach currently, and then lastly, the preparation institute that they attended for certification. So having said all that, Owen, I'm going to turn it over to you and then let the other Regional Teachers of the Year introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Owen Bondano, and I am the current Michigan Teacher of the Year. I also represent Region 9 as the Region 9 Regional Teacher of the Year. I teach 9th grade English at Oak Park High School in Oak Park, Michigan. I forget what else I was supposed to say. So 9th grade English, and my degree is from Wayne State, go Warriors, and that was my Institute of Preparation.
Thank you, Owen. We'll start with Region 1, Tana. Ani, Wabashke Makunsekwe Dijnakas, Makwadotam, Bawating and Donjaba. My name is Tana Hoffman, and I am Bear Clan, and I am from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So that's Region 1 all the way at the tippy top. I am your last exit on I-75. So, of course, not necessarily, I suppose, means that I completed my teaching pre's at Lake Superior State University, but I also spent 1 year at Central Michigan University there as well. I work for a Bureau of Indian Education School that is also a public school academy. So it's Bawating Anishinaabe Public School Academy, where I teach 2nd grade. And I'm so happy to be here. Miigwech. Thank you, Tana. Region 2, Dave.
Hi, my name is David Bunn. I am, like Josh said, from Region 2, so northern lower Michigan. And I got my teaching degree from Central Michigan University, Fire Chips. And I currently teach biology and STEM at Houghton Lake High School. So sort of northern lower Michigan, I guess. And currently in year number 20. And I think I covered all of the information I was supposed to give.
Thanks, Dave. Region 4, Barb.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barb Houston. I am the Region 4 Teacher of the Year. I work for Saginaw Township Community Schools, where I am a 3rd grade teacher at Arrowwood Elementary. I received my bachelor's and my master's degree at Saginaw Valley State University, and I am finishing up my 25th year of teaching, and I too am glad to be here.
Barb. Region 6, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. I am Chelsea Schramm. I am from Region 6, which is mid-Michigan. I went to Michigan State University, so go green. I currently teach 2nd grade at Langsburg Elementary. This is my 7th year of teaching.
Thank you, Chelsea. Janine, Region 10.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janine Scott. I am the Region 10 Michigan Teacher of the Year. I hail from Lansing, born and raised in Lansing, went to Ann Arbor for my 1st degree, but got my master's in teaching from Wayne State University. And I am very happy to be here today. I am in year 17. And I was one of Owen's teachers.
Awesome. Thank you, Janine. So really the first prompt I'm going to have all of you folks talk about is, and we'll start with Region 1 with Tana. Thinking back to your preparation at the respective institute you attended, what was something you felt especially well prepared when you first entered the classroom? I really think I was blessed in the sense that I did receive my certification from Lake Superior State University. For the main fact, and I know this is not a popular opinion, but for the main fact that I spent a year in my internship. I spent the full year in my internship and in one setting. I didn't jump around. It was in a 2nd grade setting. I spent that entire year there. And I think it's really important, and I feel very lucky that I got to see all of the ups and downs of education throughout that year in one single classroom. I think it's extremely important, especially as a new teacher begins with classroom management, to be able to figure out how they've done wrong at the beginning of the year. And I think that's something, if you don't come in with strong classroom management, you have a huge learning curve that you need to work on, especially as you move into the next, right after Christmas break. And so I think it's really important that teachers get that learning curve, because I, as somebody who has had a student teacher come into her classroom, I find that that's where that individual lagged. I felt that they were very prepared in other academic ways, and even in multi-tiered systems of support, which from Lake Superior State, which I was very impressed to see.
but I did find that full cycle of being able to fail and then figure out how to fix it and then implement was crucial, or at least for me was crucial. And I feel that's another positive part, once again, with that full year cycle of internship that I enjoyed.
Dave.
Well, I'd echo Tana's experiences that helped me. Central only had this semester of student teaching, but the amount of experiences that I had prior to that were huge. I had, you know, the shadowing experiences, and I had the mid-tier, and I had, you know, the standard things. But Central at the time provided me with so many helpful mentors and master teachers, and the network at the time, especially, you know, pre-social media and all that, the network that I had provided to me by Central was wonderful. And just being able to bounce ideas off of them, and they told me a lot of things, and maybe at the time as a 22-year-old I didn't listen to all of it, but it was all there. And I think really that was one of the things that I was able to reach out to a lot of different people and get some experience, whether it was firsthand or just advice. And I had people to lean on, and my other teachers in my cohort student teaching, that was really huge. And so I think Central did a really nice job of providing me with a lot of people to network with and a lot of help to get prepared.
Barb.
The thing that I appreciated the most about Saginaw Valley State University was my methodology. They were able to get us into the classrooms prior to doing our student teaching. And they were really, really good about spreading us amongst different grade levels to kind of give us a sense of taste of what a primary classroom would feel like, or an intermediate, all the way from K through 8, because I wanted to be elementary. So I went in as a non-traditional student. I started later, and coming from a strong preschool background where I was a director of a daycare center, I just knew that that's where I was going to be, that I was going to be a kindergarten teacher, because that's what I felt like I was good at. And the methodology work in reading and science, math, and social studies, getting into the classrooms, you know, working with 5th graders or 6th graders, or doing 3rd grade math. It broadened my perspective, and it gave me the confidence to kind of go out on that limb a little bit further. And so I've taught all of them, K through 5, and 3rd grade being my favorite. And I don't think that I would have maybe gone there without having a sample through my methodology work.
Chelsea.
I think that, so I went to Michigan State University, and I was in the classroom from day one. I mean, every single year we were in a classroom, and the grades were really spread out. And I think that just prepared me to be a well-rounded, reflective teacher. I came out of college ready to defend my reasonings, make assessment-driven decisions, really be reflective of my classroom management. So I think that Michigan State really taught me to reflect on why I was making all of my decisions and what to do next if something wasn't working. I think all of my peers that I know that have also gone to Michigan State, we all feel really, really comfortable in our classroom management and behavior management. And I think there's something to be said with being in the classroom, you know, an elementary classroom just as much as you're in a college classroom, and really getting to have conversations and be reflective. Yeah, I think that was kind of bouncing back on what everyone else was saying, but yeah, I think that was really helpful.
Owen.
I want to sort of bounce off of what Chelsea just said. I think that I had a lot of confidence about my ability to make decisions, especially curriculum-based decisions. and how to defend those decisions. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. I was a hot mess my first year as a teacher. I think we're all pretty much hot messes year one. It's just what happens. But one thing that I was confident on for that whole year was my ability to backwards plan a unit, to backwards plan a lesson, to really figure out what am I trying to teach here and how can I effectively do that, to even shift gears within that, to say this isn't working, what's a different way I can do this, and to pull things that I knew were backed by science and by data, and by research, that I knew would help. I felt really strong in that, even when I felt really weak in just about everything else.
Janine?
Well, I loved being a student at Wayne State. They offered a non-traditional program for people like myself with a master's in teaching because I had a bachelor's in engineering. And one of the things that I felt that Wayne State did particularly well in teaching me was the philosophy behind teaching and why we do it. Philosophy of education had a huge impact on how I see my students and how I see the world and how I see education. I'm focusing on that more so because everything everybody else said, I agree with. But I just know that one of the things that always struck me, and even now, I think of Out of the Lives of Students and think about students coming from a philosophical standpoint and what is education and how education changes. And I don't know if I would have ever thought about that if I hadn't taken a philosophy of education class in my prep. My pre-student teaching was very valuable at the school. The semester of pre-student teaching was super valuable to me, and my student teaching was super valuable. I happen to love the fact that because I knew I was going to go teach high school, I did my pre-student teaching in middle school, and then I did my student teaching in high school. Then I ended up going to middle school because, of course, we all know nothing. So I ended up teaching in middle school initially, and now I'm back in high school. So I think that one of the very, very valuable things that Wayne State allowed us to do was to pre-student teach in one setting and student teach in another.
Thank you, Janine. Don't unmute just yet because we're going to start with you and sneak our way back around to Region 1. For the next question, which is, what are some things that you may not have learned or weren't especially emphasized in your own preparation program that you have found to be incredibly valuable and that you would like to recommend or otherwise suggest that programs add or emphasize to a greater degree for new students?
Okay, so this is a really big one. And you would start with me on this, Josh, right? So one of the things that really got to me as a student at Wayne State, as an urban educator, planning to be an urban educator in an urban environment, was lack of urban faculty. I had one Black teacher at Wayne. Now that beat the amount I had at U of M in engineering, which was none. But, you know, it's one of those things where as a Black student at a university in a Black city, whose focus was to be teaching, in my mind, kids in an urban education setting, if my instructors weren't going to be Black, if they weren't going to look like some or most of the students that I teach, at the very least, I wish they would have brought in people who look like me, or who look like the kids I'm going to teach, or who were from the environment where I was going to teach. You know, I feel that it's super important, and I'm Black, so I notice it all the time. Everywhere I go, I look for Black people because I'm Black. That's just how that goes. So wherever I am and whatever I do, that is one of the lenses that I bring to my situation. You know, I got really lucky growing up in Lansing. Our schools were super integrated. It's like, it was crazy when in the 80s. My friends looked like everybody. We even had people coming over from Laos. We had a Hmong population. We had everybody. And I was super lucky that I got to meet people who looked like me, but didn't look like me. I got to meet the people who lived on farms because Lansing is close to farms, and people who were from the city. When I became a teacher at an educational institution in the city, I didn't feel like I got enough representation. Then I got lucky because my professor, one of my college professors, recognized that I was really good. And then Wayne State hired me to be a teacher at Wayne State. And so I was able to teach. And I hope I focused on those different aspects. I hope I showed some diversity. I hope that I talked about inclusion. And I know that it's one of those things that's very difficult because you can kind of get who you can get. But I just think that I wish that Wayne would have done better in the College of Education with representation from all aspects. And like I said, if you can't get the faculty there, then at least make sure the faculty brings people in who look like me. And then I'm gonna back up a little bit more. As a teacher in Detroit Public Schools, we don't have that strong of a partnership with Wayne State Teacher Education. Since I've been a teacher in Detroit Public Schools, I've been trying to get, well, basically when I taught at Wayne State, I would beg my teachers to come and become my student teachers and my pre-student teachers. So I got some Wayne State students, but I just wish that our partnership was stronger with the city of Detroit. But I still love Wayne State, still a great place, but I'm just gonna keep it real.
Thank you, Janine. Owen.
So I'm going to take the opportunity here to toot Janine's horn because, as she mentioned, she was my professor at Wayne State. And so she was largely the exception to what I'm about to say, which is that I wish that I had gotten more of what I like to think of as the ground level of education, the day-to-day work on, boots on the ground work of it. Not necessarily more experience, because I actually did get quite a bit of good experience in my various pre-service opportunities. And also I was working in schools at the time. I was a paraprofessional while I was going to school. So I had a lot of experience to draw from. But I feel like I mentioned, the strength was that I was really good at like backwards planning and the curriculum and that whole part of things. And I learned a ton about the sort of like high level thinking that goes into organizing what your students learn and teaching in different ways and, being, able to accommodate and modify and differentiate and all those things. I learned all that stuff really well, but I didn't really have a handle on classroom management. I didn't have a handle on sort of the day-to-day, like, okay, you've walked into your classroom, you have your lesson plan in front of you. How do you go from this piece of paper to the thing that's going to happen in front of your students? Like, there was a disconnect there that I had to practice a lot, both as a student teacher and then as a classroom teacher, knew that that I had to practice that connection a lot for myself. And it was something that took me a long time getting comfortable of how do I take this really great plan I have and implement it. Now, when Professor Scott was my professor, one of the most valuable things about her class was that she would spend some time at the start of every class just talking about the things happening in her classroom. Because of course she was also teaching in Detroit at the time. And she would just say, like, this is what's going on right now. This is what my students are doing. This is what's happening at, like, the admin level. This is the meeting I was just in. And I got this picture of what the boots on the ground work of teaching is like, and how you think in the moment and shift where you're going and react to the students in front of you, because that piece of paper is great, but if it doesn't fit the faces in front of you, then it's worthless. And I didn't get much at Wayne State that really bridged that gap for me, except for these sort of impromptu off the curriculum talks that Professor Scott would give us. So that's what I would say would be the thing that I wished I'd had at that time.
Thank you, Owen. Chelsea.
So you have two thoughts that are pretty connected. My first one is, I wish that I would have known how to handle students that were severely at risk. And I don't necessarily mean educationally, I mean their home life. So how would I have handled my students? And what were my look fors for CPS phone calls? I spent a lot of times in the classroom, but I was excluded from a lot of those conversations because I wasn't teacher of record. And of course, for privacy needs and all that, which I totally understand.
But once I had the classroom, it was mine. I didn't know all those look fors. I didn't know the look fors of sexual assault. I didn't know those things. And I look back and I wonder, like, oh my God, what did I miss? And connected to that, I wish that I would have learned like time management and how to turn school off, because I think that's a huge reason for burnout. And I think that might be something that universities can do to help teachers out. I don't have the answer of like how to do that. That's what you guys are here for, but that's something that I wish that I would have learned is how do I make those separations? How can I help all of the kids, but how important it also is to turn it off and to have your own separate life. Because we know like a lot of the burnout happens within the first 5 years. So to me, that's a connection of what can we do that internship year to really support teachers. I had a really, really tough mentor teacher during my internship year, which I am forever grateful for because she taught me so much, but she did not teach me how to value my own time and how to make sure that I was emotionally okay that first year of teaching.
Thank you, Chelsea. Barb, turn it over to you.
I love Chelsea. I love that. I feel like when I went in to the classroom that I went in that it was going to be very service oriented and almost like it was very time consuming. It's all in. A good teacher, is all in after school, before school, in the summer. And I think that's just something that was kind of drilled in, that whole service, which is good. I mean, it's what we do. I'm also going to echo the whole trauma based. And I see that even coming in with my student teachers now. I've had, a dozen. And you learn theory, you learn psychology, you learn child psychology and, brain research and things like that. But what happens when that child goes off in the classroom and they are one of 30? How are you servicing that child? And you're keeping the other things going. And so, yes, it's a classroom management, but I think it's more than a time management and keeping, kids moving and when should they be out of their seats and in their seats and things like that. It's more about how do you keep all of the balls in the air when you have this brewing in this child and this crisis going on with this child and this child's coming home or coming to school, hungry. Kids are coming to school, and even when, 25 years ago when I started, kids come to school with baggage, and it's like, how do you maintain and that sense of hope and sense of encouragement and be able to help without it sucking everything out of you personally, because you can't take them home. So how do you leave it at school so that you can be that best person again for all of those kids at 7:30 the next day?
Barb. Dave.
Thanks, Barb, for bringing that up. That was one of the things I was going to mention is, that I'm sure that in my one psychology of education course that I had, that was brought up along with the other point that I was going to make. But I highly encourage anybody that if you've not gone through the ACEs training, ACES, Adverse Childhood Experiences training, it was, it was eye-opening, mind-blowing, all of it. And it really gives you a better perspective on the behaviors and the things that happen every day that we just sometimes chalk up to other things. And when you start to look at it, it's very, very important, which brings me to the other point that I was going to talk about was in that psychology course. I'm sure we discussed relationship building with students and how important that is, but I don't think it got as much service as some of the other things that have been brought up, our lesson planning and obviously our content knowledge and those kinds of things. But and maybe that has changed in the last 20 years, but I feel like it should be at least on par with those other things, because I've found that in many ways that has been the most important tool in my toolkit anyway, is to try and build these relationships with the students on multiple levels. And I know that we covered those things, but I wish we would have covered them a little bit more.
Thank you. Tana.
So I have three things. Sorry, I'm a past reading recovery teacher, and I'm also a past special education student. And so I have three things specifically to reading acquisition and literacy. Of course, I graduated in 1999, so that was just at the time of teachers were just beginning to leave with some kind of reading class that had to be taken. And at that time, it was diagnostic reading. And when we look at diagnostic reading, that's the deficit model approach. Find the whole and then do what? What I'm finding is that students coming out of school right now don't know what that next step is. And in order to be able to be a student or a teacher that can teach students to meet them where they're at and then take them to their zone of proximal development, reading acquisition needs to be more of a goal rather than reading diagnostic. And so that would be my first recommendation, something that I would have liked to have more knowledge of, because I did spend my first 8 years in a 4th grade classroom without that help before I became a reading recovery teacher. My second thing that I would have liked to have had more knowledge or information on, and that I would like to see a shift in teacher education program would be multicultural education. Was what we called it in 1998, 1999. But looking back on that, it was a multicultural education class with a white perspective. And that's a problem. It's a very big problem. When we consider white perspective, we are enforcing a colonial view on children and on adults that might not have that same perspective. No matter what they look like or what culture they feel that they are. And so I think it's very important that we make a change and change that from multicultural education or something of that nature to go towards a decolonizing education approach. So that means that even though the curriculum books, curriculum materials and pieces are the language that is used in those, that we teach students in college at this time to look at those books with a particular lens and perspective, one that would have multiple perspectives on a topic and an understanding, rather than just a white perspective. And so I think that's really important. And then moving on to Janine's thing is that making space for BIPOC individuals. We need to make space for people, Black, Indigenous, people of color, plain and simple. We need to make space for them. You need to make space for them because we're not getting them. Not only are we not getting them, but the state of Michigan is not getting them. We need to get more people of color, more Indigenous individuals of color in the program. At this time, Michigan only has 0.02% of us as teachers in Michigan are Indigenous. We need your help. We need your help at the university level to make connections, to make partnerships with Indigenous people, Indigenous communities, to create opportunities for people like me to be in front of students like I have. Not only that, but we have to also realize that in the state of Michigan, 98% of teachers are white. That's not okay with me. That's not the population that we have as students. Our student population does not mirror that of our teacher population. And so with that being said, once again, it goes back to creating those relationships within those communities, those minoritized communities, where they can be, I can be a part of a solution. And that is to get, of course, more people of color in front of the students that deserve them. They deserve to have a person of color in front of them. So those are my three. I'm sorry if they thought, if y'all, I don't know, Josh, did you tell them how vocal we are around here? we do kind of just say it like it is. I hope you hear that with love.
We appreciate the open and honest responses. I think that's the only way that we can all improve, is if we identify areas of improvement and move forward open and honestly. I want to take a moment to thank all of you before we go on to questions from DARTEP members. There was a question in the chat from Sandra Harris that was for Janine, but I'll turn it over. I'll give everyone an opportunity to address it if they wish afterwards. And that question was for Janine: do you think that having more minority teachers in pre-K-12 would have a positive impact on more minority students going into teaching?
So the unequivocal answer for that is yes, absolutely. I had Miss X in kindergarten. She was our teacher's aide. I had Miss Sanchez for first grade, and Miss Wilson, who was a Black teacher, excuse me, Miss Sanchez for second grade. Miss Wilson was a Black teacher in our school for second grade. I had Mr. Blair in the 11th grade. I had Miss Benavides as my assistant principal. I had Dr. Carnegie as my principal in high school, and Miss Williams and Miss McIntyre. I have just named every teacher of color I had in high school. And I just told you in high school, and it was a long time ago, but in high school in the 80s, we were very multicultural. And I just named every last one of my teachers of color. I remember that. What I do as a teacher is I don't come from education. I come from a different background. So what I do is I have my friends who are corporate executives and people who work in the industry. They come and they talk to my students, because when my students can see what you are, they can be what you are. And it makes a huge impact on them when they see it. I just as, and I'll be done, but I literally invited a group of my friends to come eat lunch with my girl students. And so my friends are doctors and lawyers and engineers and computer people and entrepreneurs. And after the meeting, one of my girls, a bunch of them, they all left like this. But one of them was like, Miss Scott, I didn't know that lawyers look like that. And I said, what do you mean? That look like that, that look like that, your friend. I said, what do you mean? Get her hairs and nails did. I didn't know they look like that. I said, oh, what do you mean look like one of the ladies from the East Side, you know, who get their hairs and nails did? Yes. She never knew because she never saw it. It opened up a whole realm of possibilities. So yes, if we can get them, get them. You know, and I had such positive teachers in high school. They were all very encouraging, telling me what I could do and where I could go and how I could get there. But I just named every last Black teacher and Hispanic teacher that I had. Every teacher of color that I had. And I remember from, I don't remember how to say Miss X's name. It was really long, so we called her Miss X in kindergarten.
If I could just piggyback very quickly, there's a concept that Laverne Cox puts out there that she doesn't like being called a role model. She likes being called a possibility model, that your job is to model one possibility of adulthood or of personhood for your students. And I love that myself, because I'm a queer teacher. I'm an out queer educator. And I think I didn't have any out queer educators when I went through my whole K-12 experience, in part because they could have gotten fired for being out. But you know, it left me and my friends all wondering if there were adults in the world who were just successful, normal people who were also queer. Um, you know, we didn't know if that possibility existed for us. And so I think it is super important to have all kinds of possibility models in front of all kinds of kids. And so I just wanted to bring a wording of possibility model into it because I think it's so powerful to think about it in that term of what possibility models you're putting in front of kids. So.
Can I piggyback on that, or do I have to wait my turn?
You can go ahead, Barb.
Okay. So I can't change. I'm a white woman. I can't change that. Okay. But what I can bring to my kids is through literature. I can make sure that I'm very conscious to that they see themselves in the literature that I'm sharing, in the curriculum that I'm delivering. And it takes a lot of work, but I have to do that. If they're going to see themselves, see those possibilities, then I have to be very deliberate in the curriculum that I'm teaching, the way that I'm teaching it, because I can't change the color of my skin. I can't change the gender. I am who I am.
And I want to kind of go a little bit farther with that and say, thank you, Barb, because I can't do it all by myself. There's only, like I said, 0.02% of us. I can't do it alone. I've got to ask for allies and help in this endeavor, because unfortunately the way it is, I mean, in Michigan, 1% of our population in a school is Native American. I have a larger percent, and therefore I can, in my Bureau of Indian Education school, I can be that person for them. But out in the real world, aside from our reservation, I need people. I need your teachers. I need people to think about what they're teaching. I need you to think about how romanticized Columbus Day is. I need you to consider how romanticized and unfactual Thanksgiving is, and how we don't necessarily all celebrate. And I mean, we've done the Christmas thing, right? I think we've all kind of been there, but now we need to go further. We need to do more work. And this work is really hard because it's self-reflection work. It's work on what kind of person I am. And if you ultimately find out in the digging that there's resistance, it's because you're resisting what you thought you knew that maybe isn't what you know about yourself anymore. And so it needs to happen. And the only way that we can, like I said, do that is with allies. Owen needs allies. Janie needs, we all need allies. We all need to deconstruct white version, the colonial. And that's why I don't really like calling it the white version, because then it's like race against race. And that's not the way this is. It's just a colonial view of the way history or life in front of us has unfolded. And if we just pay more attention to the language that we use and how we use it, I mean, just thinking about it, diagnostic training is from a deficit model. Acquisition training is from a positive place. So, you know, when we just think about those kinds of things, I know it all sounds politically correct, but it's more than that. It's way more than that. And so once again, we need people, allies in classrooms all around Michigan, once again, doing the literature, deconstructing and giving perspectives, because like I said, there's just not enough of us to be in every single classroom.
Thank you, Tana. And before anyone else jumps in, I want to read another question that was dropped in the chat. I don't want to cut off our train of thought here, but the question in the chat was, what are some ways that the high schools, especially in minority districts, that they can do to encourage students to go into the teaching field? And I think I'll add a little bit to that, as particular students who are currently underrepresented in the teaching profession. I'll turn it over to whoever wants to kick that off.
I wasn't necessarily an underrepresented student at all, but I have a thought. Um, so when I was in high school, one of my independent study classes, I was able to run part of our band class, and that was really helpful. I originally thought I was going to school to be a veterinarian, and I was really fortunate to pick a university that was great at both programs. um, and my independent study class, like while I was in high school, got my mind thinking like, teaching could be really fascinating. I'm going to take a class on that, and then that trickled into college. So just having that opportunity of being in another classroom.
I'd second that. One of the things that I know Saginaw Township Community Schools did, and they ended up getting rid of like through cuts and things like that. But I would really like to see bringing back those teacher cadet programs at the high school level. That way we could encourage those high school students, and they could be mentoring and working within our elementary buildings and things like that. So we could do a lot of cross, role models and tutoring and things like that. But let's bring back those teacher cadet programs at the high school level.
One of the things that I got the opportunity to do when I was in high school was be a teaching assistant for one of my teachers in high school. Now that's because I'm an overachiever and I chose to do that instead of going to lunch, but it gave me the opportunity to be in a classroom in a leadership role. And also I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that teacher did and see sort of the reality of it. And I also went to school for something different. I was a music major at first and got lucky enough to go to a place that had good programs in both fields. But I think, giving them the opportunity, giving students the opportunity to see the realities of teaching and see where they can fit inside of it is important. And also it's important to be, and this is beyond DARTEP perhaps, but we need to make sure that all of our schools are places where students feel loved and supported, because one of the biggest ways I think that we lose potential future teachers is if you have a bad experience, if you're traumatized from your own experience as a student, why would you ever want to go back into a school? And so making sure that our students aren't traumatized by school is, I think, one of the best ways to increase their chances of becoming a teacher.
I was exactly where I was going with that, Ellen, is the whole idea that you need to reflect. Reflect on the experience that students are having. And if, like Owen said, if you're being traumatized by one thing or another in school, that's definitely not a place. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't have fun there. And then I need us to think about most teachers, or at least most individuals who become teachers, found learning to be easy or to be more like magic. So when we think about our minoritized communities, it's not magic. There are so many other traumas or so many other issues, at-risk pieces that are getting in the way, that school is not easy. It's not magic. I'm dyslexic and a minoritized individual. It was not easy for me, but I did have an experience that therefore changed the trajectory of my life and how I did want to become a teacher. If those students don't have those opportunities, or if they constantly feel oppressed by the books, if they constantly feel oppressed by the teachers in front of them because of the way that they aren't meeting their needs where they're at, then you won't want to go back into that setting. So one of the things, okay, well, I lost my train of thought. So there.
I think Tana mentioned too, when she was talking about experiences, I think most of us probably would agree that no matter how much we got, we could have used more. And if you trickle that all the way down into the high school or, whatever level, the more of those experiences and opportunities students can have, like Owen said, he was a teacher's aide. Well, I think, a lot of us may have done that. Well, that's not necessarily an experience that's available much anymore because it's not a curricular thing. And so if we can somehow make that happen more often where people get those experiences, it might trigger that event, that thing, whatever it is that makes us all want to do it, or at least give it a shot. The more of those you can get before you have a degree and now here you go teach, that's, I think, would be very beneficial and, illuminate some of those maybe on the fence students.
Oh, and you had mentioned that, you know, some of these problems might be bigger than this group, but I would argue that it is like this group can solve this. Of course, we're not going to be able to solve it tomorrow, but by teaching incoming teachers how to teach a whole child, that academics are only one portion of teaching, but we have everything else, and giving them the tools to be successful solves a lot of this. Because even if you're a minority student that has me, your white teacher there, but I'm loving you, and you know, I'm telling you you can like literally do anything, and I'm showing you how you can be anything. That's one step in the right direction. I'm not saying it's the end answer, but I think that's something that we can do relatively quickly.
One other thing is all we have to do really is reach out and touch somebody. And I think that teacher preparation programs can be better about prepping their student teachers to prep their students. You know, one thing that I tell my students all the time is you should think about being a teacher because you understand the struggle of mathematics. So if you understand the struggle of math and you overcame it, you should be able to teach. And I don't think that the very best teachers have always been the very best students. I think that the very best teachers, with the exception of me, of course, because I was a great high school student, but I think some of the very, very best teachers are the ones who struggle. The struggle is real. And if you know what it feels like to struggle, or you know what it feels like to be marginalized, or you know what it feels like to be pushed to that side, you would be a great teacher. So I think that one of the things that all teacher preparation programs should push is when you do get out in the field, look at those students who you think could be a great teacher because of blank. It literally might be because they are the funnest student in the room. You make education exciting for those kids. Therefore, you should think about being a teacher. It's not for the faint of heart, right? And you shouldn't do it unless you love it. But sometimes we don't even think about being teachers. And so there's a person who plants that seed sometimes. So we should all, as teacher preparation programs, be intentional about putting that out with our new teachers so that each one can reach one.
Thank you, Janine. And I want to, unfortunately, we've hit the end of our time here. So I want to say thank you to all the members of DARTEP, but especially if we can do a virtual round of applause here for our panel. We want to really appreciate each of their time as they share their thoughts and reflections. And I do want each of you to know that if you have any additional questions for the Regional Teachers of the Year, we're happy to connect you. These are folks who are alumni from a lot of your programs, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to find ways to connect with the new teacher candidates, however they can be helpful. So thank you all. And Sean, turn it back to you.
Great, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you at these meetings. We'd love to have you at future ones, even if just sit and listen, jump in on other parts of it. So, you know, we really value that connection. We're at the point now, so the end of the meeting is MDE debrief, which is Q&A on topics that were raised. We got a lot of things done early. And I haven't seen any new questions come through on things, but I have an open floor for Q&A with
Sean, I have a question. This is Lisa.
Yeah. Hey, Lisa.
I was looking at the stuff on the 59712. Is there a date in which current programs will be phased out, like similar to elementary ed, where students had to be completed with their current program by this date? Is that going to happen with the current English education major and the math major at the high school level?
That's a great question. And the answer is no. We just have that final projected offering of the tests of 2029. So, you know, once your new programs come online, advising students in the phasing out programs that this is their last chance, this will be their last opportunity to test. Otherwise, if they're not going to finish in time, then they need to transition to the other one. The most recently updated timeline for PK3 and 3.6, we took out that that stop date so that institutions could have more flexibility in moving people between programs. And just knowing when the last date for the test would be, that becomes your hard deadline for those students to be, you know, through the door or at 90% through. We know different institutions have different capacities for what kind of you know, options they can offer for new program candidates and old program candidates.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Sean, I have another question.
Yep.
For the endorsements that have like group social studies, for example, like they both have the RX cert code.
Right.
Now that we just have like a standard certificate and it's not like an elementary or secondary, is there a way to decipher that when students apply for that? Because I don't really know what they see.
Well, yeah, it'll say, and if you look in the, so if you look in our written updates, there's a couple of mock-up pictures of the certificates. One is Kelly's and one is mine. We put ours in so you could see we're certified teachers too. But for each subject area under the endorsements, there is a grade band next to it. So it would say like social studies RX K8 or 612.
Okay, gotcha.
And then eventually, you know, 5, 9, 7, 12.
Okay.
Sean, where can we locate the written updates?
Well, we emailed them out on Tuesday, and they get posted. Brian posts them to the DARTEP website after, you know, with everything else that gets posted about the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I do want to mention one thing. We were talking about the applicant screenshots, like the applicant walkthrough process. November 2nd, Dan sent out a thing about MOEX enhancements that had some kind of walkthrough from an applicant experience of applying for a certificate and then what you have to click on in order to get through that. We had it sent to deans, directors, and cert officers. If you did not get that, you may contact Dan, but it went out on November 2nd. And it's it was a Word file that just says MOEX enhancements and then has a date on it, but it's got that candidate walkthrough that had been addressed earlier in questions. That's unless there are other questions, that's sort of it from our end. So I turn it back to you, Lori.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Thank you everyone for joining today. Just a reminder that the next 2 DARTEP meetings will be virtual, and we will see you again February 5th. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Jennifer, or Beth, and we'd be happy to help. So have a good rest of your day.